I want to talk about co-parenting communication because I actually have two trials this week. I have one tomorrow and I have one Wednesday. And I have been buried in pretrial statements and getting those ready and getting exhibits ready to send into the judge to get ready for trial. Spent most of the weekend working and reviewing exhibits. And one thing that I've observed about the exhibits for this particular trial is that there is a lot of disrespectful communication happening between these parents. And I can tell you that a lot of the communication that happened between them that was very disrespectful was when there was nothing going on in the case. It was just kind of those in between times, in between the divorce and now. And the F bombs are flying, they're calling each other horrible names. And of course, now each party is trying to use those communications against the other. So, I think for starters, I really should go without saying, but I have to remind clients of this often because so many of them are guilty of it and there's no judgment there, but it just is what it is. I think people get so upset and defensive of their children and defensive of their position that they just start losing respect for the other parent. And I'm not saying you have to respect the other parent, but you at least have to act like you do, even when there's not a case happening, because guess what? Even with people who get along very well, something may happen that causes the relationship to blow up. And although it seems like it might never happen, you may end up in court. And those communications really could be the death of your case, the death of your relationship with your children. So, I want to say that whether you're in the middle of litigation or not, whether you're getting along with your ex or not, you should always maintain high standards when it comes to communication. Not calling the other person names, not blaming the other person, not necessarily being a victim. So, and remember some of the basics about conflict. One of the basics that I've remembered that I've learned is talking about your feelings, like when somebody says something, how it makes you feel or how it makes your children feel, as opposed to pointing the finger and blaming the other person. When you point the finger and when you blame the other person, then it looks bad because you're blaming and you're not taking any responsibility. You're not being accountable at all for your actions. And I think that when you get into trials, that's one of the things the judge looks at is whether or not you're willing to take responsibility for your role in whatever's happening. And although, sometimes a lot of what's happening, a lot of the conflict is caused by one person, I would say in most cases, when there's conflict, it's a little bit of one person and a little bit of the other person. And they may be two really great people individually, but when you put them together, they're like oil and water and they're very toxic and they communicate very poorly. So, the last thing you want to do is have yourself put in a situation when you're under the microscope that is not reflecting who you are, because even the best of us get sucked in by people who are narcissistic, who are sociopaths, who are attacking us. I mean, sometimes we just lash out, even if we're a great person. But, just one bad email from you could turn things around or really could taint what the judge is feeling about you. So in your communication with your ex, I would say keep those communications short, especially when they're related to the children. Keep them to the children. Don't go into sandbagging about things that happened in the relationship, whether somebody cheated or did this or that, years and years ago. Talk about whatever the situation is at hand. Keep the emails brief. I would keep them very organized, limit the number of issues in each mail. Definitely don't call names, don't blame, don't finger point, and don't put yourself in the position of being a victim. Another thing is you have the power to control your situation. And, a lot of people are victims. They've been victims of domestic violence or emotional abuse or physical abuse, but you don't have to stay in that victim role forever. You can take a choice about whether you're going to turn it around and you're going to start taking charge of your own life, especially if you're no longer in the relationship with that person. What happened in the past is relevant in custody cases, especially if there was physical abuse and emotional abuse, but you don't have to let that color your world forever. You don't have to go out into the world and act. You don't have to act as a victim forever. Here, henceforth, from now on. That's a word that my daughter just used or learned in vocabulary. Henceforth, from now on, you're going to decide in your mind what kind of person that you want to be. And then you're going to show up every single day as that person, especially when it's hard, because sometimes it's hard. I know the kind of person that I want to be in everyday life. And sometimes it's really hard to be that person. But if you can make a conscious choice, you can do it. So